It was a quiet Tuesday evening at a cozy restaurant tucked away on the outskirts of a bustling city. The place had an air of familiarity, where regular patrons felt at home, and newcomers were greeted with warm smiles. The smell of freshly baked bread mingled with the rich aroma of coffee and grilled steak, creating an inviting atmosphere. Dim, golden lighting cast a soft glow on the wooden tables, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. It was the kind of place where secrets were shared, laughter echoed, and, unbeknownst to anyone, stories of life-changing significance quietly unfolded. At one corner table sat a man who exuded a presence that was impossible to ignore. He wasn't flashy, but there was something about him that demanded attention. His tailored navy blue suit and polished leather shoes hinted at a lifestyle of luxury, and his sleek silver wristwatch glinted under the light, its brand unmistakable to anyone who understood wealth. He sat there, finishing the last sip of his imported red wine, his demeanor calm yet calculating. This man, known only to a few in the city as Ethan Wainwright, was one of the wealthiest individuals in the country. He wasn't there to enjoy the ambience or the perfectly cooked filet mignon. Tonight, he was there to observe. Ethan had a reputation for his eccentricity. A self-made billionaire, he prided himself on his keen ability to judge character, often boasting that he could determine someone's true nature in a matter of minutes. But his methods were unconventional and, at times, controversial. Ethan believed that people revealed their authentic selves when they thought no one was watching, and he had come to the restaurant that night with a plan to put this belief to the test. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek leather wallet that looked as expensive as it was, custom-made from rare crocodile skin and filled with crisp $100 bills, credit cards with no limits, and a black card engraved with his name. This wallet wasn't just an accessory, tonight, it was a tool for his experiment. Ethan had decided to leave it on the table deliberately, as if forgotten, and observe what would happen. His goal was simple: to test the honesty and integrity of the restaurant staff, particularly the waitress who had been serving him. Her name was Lily. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with a tired yet determined look in her hazel eyes. Her hair, tied back in a simple ponytail, framed a face that told a story of perseverance. She wasn't just working for a paycheck, she was working for her future, and for the future of her 6-year-old son, Jamie. To most, she was just another server in a busy restaurant, but tonight, unbeknownst to her, she was about to become the subject of a billionaire's scrutiny. Ethan had noticed Lily's kindness throughout the evening. She had greeted him with a genuine smile, refilled his glass without being asked, and even remembered his preference for no ice in his water. She was efficient, polite, and attentive. But Ethan wasn't interested in surface-level niceties. He wanted to see if her actions were consistent even when faced with temptation. As he stood to leave, he carefully placed the wallet near the edge of the table, making it look like an oversight. He nodded to Lily on his way out, murmuring a polite, "Thank you," before stepping into the shadows of the evening. Lily returned to the table a few moments later to clear the plates. She immediately noticed the wallet, its polished surface gleaming under the soft light. Her first instinct was to rush after the man, but as she reached for it, she paused. Something about the situation didn't feel right. She glanced around, her eyes darting to the other tables. Was this a genuine mistake, or was there something more to it? A sinking feeling settled in her stomach, but she pushed it aside. It wasn't her place to judge, she thought. Her job was to ensure the wallet was returned to its rightful owner. She picked it up carefully, feeling the weight of its contents. As she held it, a thought crossed her mind: how easy it would be to take just a little from it. She shook her head, disgusted by the idea. Jamie's voice echoed in her mind, his innocent words reminding her of the values she had worked so hard to instill in him. "Mommy, you always say it's important to do the right thing, even when no one is watching." Little did she know, someone was watching. Ethan had positioned himself discreetly at a table near the entrance, hidden behind a newspaper he wasn't reading. He observed her every move, his sharp eyes taking in her hesitation, her resolve, and her eventual decision. His heart raced slightly, not with excitement, but with anticipation. What would she do next? Lily headed straight to the manager's office, knocking on the door before stepping inside. Ethan couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw her hand over the wallet to the manager, her face calm but resolute. For a moment, he felt a twinge of disappointment. Was it too predictable? But then, something happened that he hadn't anticipated. As Lily walked back to the dining area, she paused, her brow furrowed in thought. She turned on her heel and walked back to the manager's office. This time, her body language was different, more determined, almost confrontational. Ethan's interest was piqued. He watched as she emerged from the office moments later, clutching the wallet in her hands, her face set in a mix of confusion and defiance. She approached the exit, her steps deliberate. Ethan quickly folded his newspaper and stepped outside, positioning himself near the valet stand to avoid suspicion. He saw her step out into the cool night air, clutching the wallet tightly. She didn't look around or hesitate. Instead, she walked purposefully down the street, away from the restaurant. Ethan followed her at a distance, his curiosity now tinged with unease. Where was she going? What was she planning to do? His mind raced with possibilities. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. Lily turned into an alleyway and disappeared from view. Ethan hesitated for a moment before following her, his footsteps silent against the pavement. As he rounded the corner, he saw her standing near a small group of homeless individuals, their faces lined with hardship and hope. Without a word, she opened the wallet, pulling out the cash and handing it to the group. "This isn't mine," she said softly, "but it's meant to help someone. Maybe that's you tonight." Ethan froze, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. This wasn't a simple act of honesty. This was something deeper, a gesture that challenged everything he thought he knew about people. For the first time in years, he felt a pang of humility, a reminder that wealth couldn't buy the kind of integrity he had just seen. As Lily turned to leave, her eyes met his. There was no fear, no guilt, only a quiet strength that left him speechless. She didn't say a word, but her expression spoke volumes. It was as if she knew all along that she was being watched, but she had chosen to act according to her values anyway. Ethan stood there, the weight of his wallet suddenly feeling insignificant compared to the weight of the lesson he had just learned. The story of Ethan Wainwright and Lily began long before that fateful night at the restaurant, though neither of them could have known it. To understand what truly unfolded, one must step back to the moments that shaped their lives, the quiet struggles, the invisible victories, and the choices that brought them together in a seemingly random intersection of fate. Ethan Wainwright wasn't always a billionaire. He grew up in a small, unremarkable town, the son of a factory worker and a schoolteacher. His childhood was marked by a scarcity of luxuries but an abundance of lessons. His father taught him discipline, waking him at dawn to help with odd jobs around the neighborhood, while his mother instilled in him a love for learning, even when they couldn't afford new books. It was a modest life, but one filled with dreams. Ethan had always told himself that one day, he would rise above the constraints of his upbringing. And he did. By his mid-30s, Ethan had transformed himself from a college dropout to a tech visionary. His company, a software platform that revolutionized business communication, became a global sensation. Overnight, Ethan found himself catapulted into a world of private jets, sprawling mansions, and exclusive galas. But with his newfound wealth came an unrelenting cynicism. He began to see the world through a lens of skepticism, convinced that everyone had a price and that integrity was a commodity as rare as the diamonds he casually gifted at board meetings. His wealth became his armor, and his tests of character, his weapon. It was this belief that led him to the restaurant that night, with Lily unwittingly placed at the center of his latest experiment. But to understand why Lily reacted the way she did, one must delve into her own story, a story marked by resilience and quiet courage. Lily had grown up in the very city where she now worked as a waitress. Her childhood was a tapestry of love and hardship, stitched together by the unwavering strength of her mother, Diana. Diana had been a nurse, working long hours to provide for Lily and her younger brother, Ben, after their father passed away in a construction accident. Life was a series of sacrifices, but Diana ensured that her children never felt the weight of their struggles more than they had to. She filled their small apartment with warmth and laughter, her voice often drifting through the thin walls as she hummed lullabies to ease them to sleep. But life has a way of testing even the strongest, and tragedy struck again when Diana fell ill. A rare autoimmune disease left her bedridden, and Lily, barely out of high school, became the family's sole provider. She put aside her dreams of college and a career in art to take up any job she could find: retail, babysitting, and finally, waitressing. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept a roof over their heads. Lily's days were long, often starting before sunrise and ending well past midnight. Her mornings were spent getting Ben ready for school, ensuring he had everything he needed to succeed. Her evenings were filled with shifts at the restaurant, where she carried trays laden with steaming plates, her feet aching from hours of standing. And yet, through it all, Lily never complained. She saw her sacrifices as a small price to pay for the people she loved. When Diana passed away a few years later, Lily was left to navigate life as a single mother, having given birth to her son, Jamie, shortly before her mother's death. Jamie became her anchor, the light in her darkest moments. Every decision she made was for him, every hour worked a step toward a better future. But life, as it often does, continued to throw challenges her way. Medical bills, rent, and school supplies piled up, each one a reminder of the precariousness of their situation. And yet, Lily's spirit remained unbroken. She found solace in small joys: the way Jamie's face lit up when she read him bedtime stories, the kindness of regular customers who left generous tips, and the rare evenings when she could sit by the window with a cup of tea, dreaming of a day when life would be easier. That night at the restaurant, Lily had no idea who Ethan Wainwright was. To her, he was just another customer, albeit one with an air of quiet arrogance. She had seen his type before: wealthy, self-assured, and often dismissive of the people serving them. But Ethan was different in one way: he had been polite. He hadn't barked orders or snapped his fingers for attention. He had said thank you and even smiled, though the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. When he left the wallet on the table, Lily's first thought was practical: he's probably already in his car. I should catch him before he drives off. But as she picked it up and felt its weight, something about the situation made her pause. It wasn't just the wallet itself, though its expensive design suggested its owner was someone of means. It was the way it had been placed, almost deliberately, as if inviting her to take notice. A chill ran down her spine, but she shook it off. Her instincts told her to do the right thing, and so she did, taking the wallet to her manager, Greg, a kind but overworked man in his 50s. Someone left this at table 7, she said, placing it on his cluttered desk. I think it belongs to the man who just left. Greg glanced at the wallet, his tired eyes widening slightly. Looks like it's worth more than my car, he joked, but there was an edge to his voice. Lily left the office, her thoughts already shifting to her next task. But as the minutes passed, unease crept in. Something about the interaction didn't sit right with her. Why had Greg hesitated? And why hadn't Ethan returned for the wallet yet? She decided to check back in the office, and when she opened the door, she found Greg holding the wallet, flipping through its contents. His expression was one of hesitation, almost guilt. What are you doing? She asked, her voice steady but firm. Greg looked up, startled. I was just making sure everything was there, he said, but Lily didn't believe him. She reached for the wallet, her hand steady despite the nerves coursing through her. I'll handle it, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. As she walked out of the office, clutching the wallet tightly, her mind raced. She knew she had to get it back to its owner, but how? She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about returning lost property. There was something bigger at play, something she couldn't quite put into words. And so, with the wallet in hand and a mix of determination and uncertainty in her heart, Lily stepped out of the restaurant and into the night, unaware that her actions were being carefully watched by the man who had orchestrated it all. Ethan Wainwright, hidden in the shadows, was about to witness a moment that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the world, and himself. As Lily walked down the street, her steps purposeful and her thoughts a whirlwind, Ethan followed at a distance, his curiosity now mingled with a sense of unease. He had set out to test her, to confirm his belief that everyone had a price. But what he didn't realize was that Lily's integrity wasn't for sale. In the quiet streets of the city, under the soft glow of streetlights, a story was unfolding that would change them both in ways neither could have anticipated. The tension in the air was almost palpable as Lily walked briskly down the dimly lit street, the weight of the wallet in her hand heavier than it had any right to be. Her mind was a swirling storm of thoughts. Why had Greg been so hesitant, and why did this entire situation feel so orchestrated? She knew she had to do the right thing, but what exactly was the right thing in this case? She had no idea who the man was, only that he was wealthy, important, and likely unreachable at this hour. Ethan followed her at a cautious distance, his steps quiet and deliberate. He had staged countless tests before, observing people in moments of unguarded honesty, but none had intrigued him like this one. He couldn't put his finger on why. Was it her resolve? The way she had immediately taken the wallet to her manager? Or perhaps the confrontation he had witnessed through the office door, when she reclaimed the wallet with quiet authority? Whatever it was, he felt compelled to see this through, to understand what motivated her actions. As Lily rounded the corner, her pace quickened, and Ethan struggled to keep up without revealing himself. She stopped abruptly in front of an old community center, its faded sign hanging askew, barely visible in the faint glow of the streetlights. It was a place Ethan had driven past countless times but never given a second thought. Yet here was Lily, stepping through its doors with purpose, the wallet still clutched tightly in her hand. Inside, the air was warm and faintly musty, filled with the hum of quiet conversation and the occasional clatter of dishes. It was a food pantry, its shelves stocked with donations, its tables manned by volunteers serving hot meals to those in need. Lily was greeted with familiarity by an older woman behind the counter, her face lighting up in recognition. "Lily. What are you doing here so late?" the woman asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I need your help, Mrs. Calloway," Lily replied, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "Do you know how I can get in touch with someone who has connections, someone who can find out who this belongs to?" She held up the wallet, and Mrs. Calloway's eyes widened as she took it in. "Good heavens, that looks like it's worth a fortune," Mrs. Calloway murmured, leaning in for a closer look. "Where did you find it?" "A customer left it at the restaurant," Lily explained. "I don't know why, but something about this doesn't feel right. I want to make sure it gets back to the right person." Mrs. Calloway nodded thoughtfully. "Let me make a call. I know someone who might be able to help." She disappeared into a back room, leaving Lily standing by the counter, her gaze drifting to the people seated at the tables. A young mother cradling her baby, an elderly man hunched over a steaming bowl of soup, a group of teenagers sharing quiet laughter. They were all here because they had nowhere else to go, and for a moment, Lily felt the weight of their collective struggles pressing against her own. Ethan, who had slipped inside unnoticed, stood in the shadows, watching her. This wasn't what he had expected. He had anticipated panic, greed, or perhaps indifference. But here was a woman who, despite her own challenges, seemed determined to act with integrity. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a pang of doubt about his assumptions. Was it possible that he had been wrong about people? After a few minutes, Mrs. Calloway returned, a look of satisfaction on her face. "I spoke to a friend of mine who works at the police station," she said. "They'll have someone swing by and pick it up. They can track down the owner through the identification in the wallet." "Thank you," Lily said, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I just didn't want it to end up in the wrong hands." As they spoke, a commotion erupted at one of the tables. A man, disheveled and clearly distressed, was arguing with a volunteer over a plate of food. "I just need a little extra," the man pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'm not trying to take more than my share, I swear. It's for my kids." The volunteer looked unsure, glancing at the line of people still waiting for their meals. "I'm sorry, sir, but we have to make sure there's enough for everyone," she said gently. Lily stepped forward without hesitation. "Give him my portion," she said firmly. "I already ate at the restaurant tonight." The man looked at her in disbelief, his eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "You don't know what this means." Ethan watched the exchange, his chest tightening. This was no act, Lily's kindness was genuine. Uncalculated. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and she certainly didn't know he was watching. She was simply doing what she believed was right. But then, just as Ethan thought he had her figured out, something happened that changed the entire course of the evening. The front doors burst open, and two men in dark suits stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room. They moved with an air of authority, their presence commanding attention. One of them spotted Lily and approached her directly. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone polite but firm. "Are you the one who found Mr. Wainwright's wallet?" Lily blinked in surprise. "Yes, how do you know about that?" The man held up a small device, a sleek tablet with a blinking dot on the screen. "The wallet has a tracking chip," he explained. "Mr. Wainwright uses it as a security measure." Ethan froze. He hadn't expected his assistants to intervene so soon, and certainly not in such a dramatic fashion. He considered stepping forward, revealing himself, but something held him back. He wanted to see how Lily would handle this. Lily handed over the wallet without hesitation. "I was just trying to make sure it got back to its owner," she said. "I didn't know how else to contact him." The man nodded, his expression softening. "Thank you for your honesty. Most people wouldn't have gone to this much trouble." As the men prepared to leave, Lily hesitated. "Wait," she said. "Can I ask you something?" The man paused, turning back to her. "Of course. Why would someone as wealthy as Mr. Wainwright leave something so valuable behind?" she asked, her brow furrowed. It felt intentional. The man exchanged a brief, unreadable glance with his colleague before answering. "Mr. Wainwright has his reasons," he said carefully. "He's a man who likes to test the character of the people around him." Lily's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of anger crossing her face. "So I was a test?" she asked, her voice low but steady. "What gives him the right to play games with people's lives?" The man looked uncomfortable, but he didn't respond. Instead, he simply nodded in acknowledgement and left, the wallet securely in hand. Lily stood there for a long moment, her hands clenched into fists. She wasn't sure what angered her more, the idea that she had been manipulated or the knowledge that her integrity had been questioned. Ethan, still hidden in the shadows, felt a pang of guilt. For the first time, he wondered if his tests did more harm than good. As Lily turned to leave, her gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on the people she had helped. Despite her frustration, she felt a sense of peace knowing she had done the right thing. And as she stepped out into the night, her resolve only strengthened. She had faced challenges before, and she would face them again. But no matter what, she would always stay true to herself. Ethan watched her go, his mind racing. This wasn't how he had expected the night to end, but he couldn't deny the impact it had on him. For the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of something he couldn't quite name: respect, admiration, and perhaps even the faintest hint of shame. As the city's lights flickered in the distance, Ethan realized that this night wasn't just about testing Lily's character. It was about testing his own. Lily's thoughts were a whirlwind as she walked away from the food pantry, the chill of the evening air biting at her skin. She felt betrayed, manipulated, and deeply unsettled. How could someone, a man she didn't even know, orchestrate such an elaborate ruse just to test her integrity? Did he think so little of people that he needed to devise games to confirm their worth? The idea gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. There were bigger things to worry about: her son, her bills, and the simple act of making it through another day. Yet, no matter how much she tried to shift her focus, the situation lingered in her mind. The revelation that the wallet had a tracking chip, the suits who had come to retrieve it, and the vague explanation of the man behind it all, it felt like something out of a movie, not her modest, hard-working life. But the part that stung the most wasn't the invasion of her privacy or the manipulation. It was the unspoken implication that her character needed to be tested at all. Unbeknownst to her, Ethan Wainwright had no intention of letting the evening end there. He sat in his car, parked a discreet distance from the pantry, grappling with emotions he hadn't felt in years: shame, humility, and an uncomfortable sense of self-awareness. For so long, he had operated under the belief that his wealth afforded him the right to judge others. But Lily had shaken that foundation in ways he couldn't ignore. Ethan stared at the dashboard, the soft glow of his car's interior lights illuminating his face. He had spent his life building an empire, rising from nothing to become a symbol of success. And yet, in this moment, he felt small, his accomplishments hollow. What good was his wealth if it made him blind to the humanity of others? He couldn't shake the memory of Lily's confrontation with his assistant, the quiet fury in her voice when she asked what gave him the right to play games with people's lives. It wasn't just anger, it was a challenge, one that demanded an answer. He made a decision then and there, a decision that felt impulsive but somehow necessary. He couldn't let the night end without confronting her, without trying to make sense of the unease that had settled in his chest. He started the car and began driving, his eyes scanning the streets until he spotted her, walking briskly toward a modest apartment building a few blocks away. Lily reached the building, a nondescript structure with peeling paint and a dimly lit entryway. She fumbled with her keys, the events of the evening still heavy on her mind. As she stepped inside, the sound of hurried footsteps behind her made her pause. She turned sharply, her heart pounding, only to see the man from the restaurant standing in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan's usually composed demeanor faltered, his expression a mix of uncertainty and resolve. Lily's eyes narrowed as she recognized him, her body tensing in a mixture of anger and confusion. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "I owe you an apology," Ethan said, his tone uncharacteristically humble. "I know what I did tonight was wrong. I didn't come here to make excuses, I just want to explain." Lily crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "You think an explanation will make this okay? You treated me like some kind of lab rat, testing me as if my honesty was something you had the right to question. What makes you think you can do that to people?" Ethan flinched at her words but held his ground. "You're right," he admitted. "I've spent years thinking that my wealth gave me the right to judge others. I thought I was teaching myself something about human nature, but tonight, you showed me that I was the one who needed to learn." Lily's eyes softened slightly, though her expression remained guarded. "And what exactly did you learn?" she asked, her voice quieter but still firm. Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I learned that integrity isn't something you can measure with a test. It's not about catching people in a moment of weakness or temptation. It's about recognizing the quiet strength it takes to do the right thing, even when no one's watching. And you showed me what that looks like." Lily stared at him for a long moment, her emotions warring within her. Part of her wanted to lash out, to make him feel the frustration and humiliation his actions had caused. But another part of her, the part that believed in second chances and the possibility of change, saw something in his eyes, genuine remorse, and perhaps even a flicker of hope. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally. "What made you think this was a good idea in the first place?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I guess it started with my own insecurities," he admitted. "I grew up with nothing, always wondering if people were being honest with me or just trying to take advantage of what I could offer. When I became successful, that doubt never went away. It only got worse. Testing people, it was my way of protecting myself, of trying to find proof that there were still good people out there. But I see now that it wasn't fair. Not to you, or anyone else." Lily shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You don't need to test people to know there's good in the world," she said. "You just have to look for it. But maybe that's hard to see when you're too busy judging everyone." Her words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut, but he nodded, accepting her rebuke. "You're right," he said quietly. "And I want to do better. Not just for myself, but for the people I've hurt along the way." Lily studied him, her gaze searching for any sign of insincerity. What she saw surprised her, a man who, for all his flaws, seemed genuinely willing to change. "If you really want to do better," she said, her tone softening, "then start by using your wealth for something that matters. Not for tests or experiments, but for real change." Ethan nodded again, his mind already racing with possibilities. "I will," he promised. "And I hope, someday, I can prove to you that I mean it." Lily didn't respond immediately. She simply turned and walked toward the stairs, leaving Ethan standing in the dimly lit entryway. But as she reached the first step, she paused and looked back. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I hope you do." Ethan watched her disappear up the stairs, a sense of clarity washing over him. This night had started as an experiment, but it had turned into something far more meaningful, a lesson in humility, integrity, and the power of human connection. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time, hope. As he stepped back into the night, the city's lights shimmering around him, Ethan made a silent vow to honor the lessons he had learned. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the streets, he felt the faint stirrings of change, not just in himself, but in the world he was determined to create. The days following Ethan's encounter with Lily were unlike any he had experienced before. For a man who prided himself on control, efficiency, and meticulous planning, he found himself grappling with an unfamiliar sensation, uncertainty. The events of that night replayed in his mind like a film on an endless loop, Lily's unwavering conviction, her selflessness, and the quiet but powerful rebuke she had delivered. It wasn't anger or bitterness that lingered in her words, it was truth, cutting and raw, and it had left an indelible mark on him. Back in his penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of a life most could only dream of, Ethan felt an emptiness he hadn't noticed before. The art on the walls, the gleaming floors, the expansive view of the city, all of it seemed hollow, devoid of meaning. For years, he had convinced himself that wealth was the ultimate measure of success, that it gave him the right to judge others from a pedestal. But Lily's actions and words had shattered that illusion. She, with her modest life and unyielding principles, had shown him what true wealth looked like: integrity, kindness, and resilience. Ethan spent hours in his office, reviewing his past decisions with a critical eye. His so-called tests of character, the experiments he had orchestrated to satisfy his own insecurities, now felt like cruel games. He had prided himself on exposing the flaws in others, but the truth was that his tests revealed more about him than anyone else. They exposed his fear, his cynicism, and his failure to see the humanity in those around him. Driven by a need to make amends, Ethan began brainstorming ways to channel his wealth into meaningful change. But the task was daunting. Where did he start? How could he repair the harm he had caused and ensure his efforts weren't just empty gestures? The answer, he realized, lay in Lily. She had been the catalyst for his awakening, and her story held the key to understanding what truly mattered. Ethan reached out to his assistant, Charles, a man who had been by his side for over a decade. Charles had witnessed Ethan's rise to power and his descent into cynicism, but he had always remained loyal, though not uncritical. When Ethan shared his plans, Charles listened intently, his expression a mixture of surprise and approval. "I need to find a way to help people like Lily," Ethan said, pacing the room. "Not just with money, but with opportunities, resources, and a chance to build something lasting." Charles nodded thoughtfully. "It's a noble goal, sir," he said. "But it won't be easy. Real change takes time and commitment. Are you prepared for that?" Ethan stopped pacing and met Charles's gaze. "For the first time in my life, I think I am." The next day, Ethan called a meeting with his executive team. The room was filled with high-powered individuals, each of them accustomed to Ethan's commanding presence. But as he stood at the head of the table, there was a noticeable shift in his demeanor. He wasn't the untouchable billionaire they knew, he was a man on a mission, driven by something deeper than profit. "I've spent years building this company," he began, his voice steady but impassioned. "And while I'm proud of what we've achieved, I can't ignore the fact that I've lost sight of something important: the people we serve, the communities we impact, and the values we stand for. It's time to change that." He outlined his plan to create a foundation dedicated to supporting working-class families, small businesses, and underprivileged communities. The foundation would focus on providing access to education, affordable housing, and mental health resources. It would also fund community centers like the one Lily had visited, ensuring that those in need had a place to turn for support. The room was silent as Ethan finished speaking, his words hanging in the air like a challenge. For a moment, he wondered if he had overstepped, if his team would see this as a distraction from the company's goals. But then, one by one, they began to nod, their expressions shifting from surprise to determination. They saw the sincerity in Ethan's eyes, and it inspired them to believe in his vision. The foundation was launched within weeks, and Ethan threw himself into the work with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. He visited community centers, spoke with families, and listened to their stories. He saw firsthand the struggles they faced and the resilience they demonstrated in the face of adversity. And with each encounter, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Lily's life had taken an unexpected turn. The events of that night at the restaurant had remained a closely guarded secret, but word of her actions had spread through the community. Regulars at the restaurant left generous tips, and her manager, Greg, began treating her with newfound respect. But the biggest surprise came when she received a letter from the newly formed Wainwright Foundation. The letter, written in Ethan's own hand, expressed gratitude for her integrity and outlined a scholarship fund created in her name. The fund would provide financial support for single parents pursuing education or vocational training, ensuring they had the resources to build a better future for their families. Enclosed with the letter was an invitation to the foundation's inaugural gala, where Lily would be honored for her role in inspiring its creation. At first, Lily was hesitant to accept. She wasn't comfortable with attention, and the idea of standing in front of a room full of strangers made her uneasy. But as she thought about the impact the foundation could have, she realized she couldn't let her discomfort hold her back. This was bigger than her, it was about creating opportunities for others who, like her, had faced seemingly insurmountable odds. The gala was a grand affair, held in a sprawling venue adorned with elegant decorations and attended by influential figures from across the city. Lily arrived in a simple but elegant dress, her nerves heightened by the sheer scale of the event. As she entered the room, she was greeted by Ethan, who looked genuinely pleased to see her. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he admitted, his tone warm and sincere. "I almost didn't," Lily replied with a small smile. But I figured if I can handle everything life's thrown at me so far, I can handle this too. Ethan laughed, a sound that felt lighter than it had in years. You've already handled far more than I ever could, he said. And I hope tonight shows you just how much your actions have inspired. The evening was a blur of speeches, introductions, and heartfelt conversations. When it was Lily's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent as she began. I never thought I'd find myself here, she said, her voice steady but emotional. I'm just a waitress, a single mom trying to make ends meet. But what I've learned is that even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect. Kindness, integrity, and standing up for what's right, they matter. And if this foundation can help others find hope and opportunity, then I'm proud to be a part of it. The room erupted into applause, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt a sense of pride, not just for herself, but for what she represented. She had turned a moment of adversity into a catalyst for change, and she wasn't alone in that journey. Ethan watched from the side, his heart swelling with gratitude. In Lily, he had found not just a test of integrity, but a reminder of the values he had lost along the way. And as he looked out at the room filled with people committed to making a difference, he knew that this was only the beginning of something far greater than himself. The months following the gala were a whirlwind for both Ethan and Lily, each of them navigating uncharted territory in their respective lives. For Ethan, the Wainwright Foundation became more than a project, it was a personal mission. He immersed himself in its operations, personally overseeing initiatives and ensuring that every dollar was spent wisely. He no longer approached the world as a cynic, testing others for their flaws. Instead, he began to see people through a lens of compassion, understanding that everyone was carrying burdens invisible to the naked eye. Lily, on the other hand, found herself at the center of attention in ways she had never expected. The scholarship fund bearing her name grew rapidly, fueled by donations from individuals who had heard her story. She was invited to speak at community events and universities, sharing her experiences and the lessons she had learned. It was overwhelming at first. Public speaking wasn't something she had ever imagined herself doing, but over time, she found her voice. Her story resonated with people from all walks of life. It wasn't just a tale of a waitress returning a wallet, it was a story of integrity, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. Audiences were inspired not only by her actions but by her unwavering commitment to her values in the face of adversity. Her humility and authenticity shone through, and she quickly became a symbol of hope for many. But with newfound recognition came challenges. Lily was still a single mother, and while she appreciated the opportunities that had come her way, she remained deeply rooted in her reality. She still worked at the restaurant, though her hours had lessened thanks to the support she received. Jamie, her young son, was her constant priority, and she often worried about how the changes in her life would affect him. Ethan, sensing her apprehension, reached out to her one evening. They had kept in touch since the gala, their relationship evolving from strangers to unlikely friends. Over dinner in a quiet corner of the city, Ethan shared an idea that had been forming in his mind. Lily, I've been thinking, he began, his tone thoughtful. You've done so much to inspire others, and I know the foundation is just the beginning. But I want to make sure you and Jamie are supported too. You deserve more than just a scholarship fund in your name, you deserve the opportunity to live without constant worry. Lily looked at him warily. Ethan, I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I don't want handouts. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I don't want to lose that. I'm not offering a handout, Ethan said with a gentle smile. I'm offering a partnership. You have a unique ability to connect with people, to inspire them. I want you to help shape the foundation's future. Be a part of its leadership. Use your experiences to guide the programs we develop. Lily was stunned. The idea of stepping into a leadership role at the foundation was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had spent so much of her life surviving that she had never considered what it might mean to truly thrive. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "I don't have the kind of experience you need for something like that." "You have something far more valuable than experience," Ethan said firmly. "You have heart. You understand the struggles people face because you've lived them. That's something no amount of education or training can replace." Lily thought about Jamie, about the life she wanted to create for him. She thought about the people she could help, the lives she could touch. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it. But only if I can still be myself. I don't want to lose who I am in all of this." Ethan grinned. "That's exactly who I need you to be." The transition wasn't easy. Lily faced a steep learning curve as she stepped into her new role at the foundation. She attended workshops, learned about nonprofit management, and worked closely with Ethan's team to design programs that addressed the needs of struggling families. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding, and she found herself growing in ways she hadn't thought possible. Meanwhile, the foundation's impact began to ripple across the city and beyond. New community centers were established, scholarships were awarded, and small businesses received grants to help them thrive. The programs were tailored to empower individuals, providing them with the tools they needed to build better lives. The foundation became a beacon of hope, and its success attracted attention from national media. Ethan, for his part, was no longer the reclusive billionaire he had once been. He attended events, spoke openly about his transformation, and used his platform to advocate for change. But he always gave credit where it was due, reminding everyone that it was Lily who had inspired him to take this path. One day, as they toured a newly opened community center, Ethan and Lily paused to watch a group of children playing in the bright, welcoming space. Jamie was among them, his laughter echoing through the room. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she took in the scene. "I never thought I'd see this," she said quietly. "A place where people can come and feel safe, where kids can just be kids." Ethan nodded, his gaze soft. "It's because of you, Lily. You showed me what's possible when we put people first." Lily turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's not just me. It's everyone who believed in this, who worked to make it happen. It's proof that we're stronger together." As the years passed, the foundation continued to grow, touching countless lives. Lily became a respected leader, her journey inspiring others to find their own strength and integrity. Ethan, once a man consumed by doubt and cynicism, found a sense of purpose that transcended wealth. Together, they built something lasting, a legacy of hope, compassion, and change. In the end, their story wasn't about a billionaire testing a waitress. It was about two people from vastly different worlds coming together to prove that kindness and integrity could change the world. And as they stood side by side, watching the seeds they had sown take root and flourish, they knew that their journey was only just beginning. The story left an indelible mark on the community, sparking conversations about values, purpose, and the power of human connection. People who heard it were left with a question that echoed in their hearts: what would you do if given the chance to make a difference? And in that question lay the hope that the story of Ethan and Lily would inspire others to create ripples of change, far and wide.